Jane Gregory. I'm a teacher of the Alexander Technique, and this is a beginner's guide to creating short, impactful Alexander Technique videos. In recent times, everyone from school children to grandparents are using the internet more, and this gives Alexander Technique teachers a golden opportunity to reach new audiences and to reach existing audiences in a new way. In fact, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. It turns out a picture is actually worth 60,000 words. Yes, apparently the human brain processes visual information 60,000 times faster than text. So 18 months ago, I had never even imagined creating a video, but I work as the Alexander Technique teacher at the Institute for Contemporary Music Performance, or ICMP for short. And last summer, they asked me to support the staff, music teachers, and music students, all of whom were either working from home, teaching from home, or learning from home. At first, it seemed like an impossible task, and I really didn't think I could do it. But I ended up producing 30 short videos for this disparate group of people, and the feedback was that the videos were really helpful. So in this session, I'm hoping to convince you to at least give videoing a try. We'll break this guide down into 3 sections. In the first section, we'll look at how to get started. In the second section, I'll give you some of the tips and tricks that I found useful and hopefully prevent you from falling into the same pitfalls that I did. And in the third section, we'll look at what creates good Alexander Technique content. So just think of social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram with their restrictions on video length. And that's why we'll be focusing on creating videos of around 2 to 3 minutes in length. So let's move to section 1 of this guide. Where do you start? You may already have ideas that have come to you from your teaching, but if not, there's a good marketing tool called the 5 W's, which can be very helpful to get you started. The 5 W's are who, where, what, when, and why. And if you ask yourself these questions, not necessarily in that order, you can clarify what it is that you're trying to achieve. In this case, let's start with why. Why have you decided to produce a video? And what is it you want to achieve? Is it to promote your practice? Or maybe widen your catchment area? Or do you want to become more visible as an Alexander Technique teacher? Maybe you want to create a video to add value, in other words, to create resources for existing students. Or maybe your aim is to create resources for new students. Or maybe support your online teaching. You can have a number of different reasons for wanting to create a video. Just by getting the ball rolling, you already started to answer the other 4 W's. So let's take a quick look at who. Who is the video aimed at? It's worth visualizing your target audience in front of you as you imagine recording your video. The next W is what. What is the message that you want to get across? And what do you want them to do as a result of your video? Click here, book a lesson, or info only. By now you're starting to get a much better picture of what your video might look like. And by the way, there's no correct order for the W's, just start with the one that feels right for you. Okay, so 2 more W's to go. The next one is where. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or on your website. Or none of these. Maybe you just want to send your video directly to your particular students. And finally, when. Is your video time-bound? For instance, do you need to produce a video in time for an event, like a conference? Or for the start of the school year, maybe? The first thing to say is that all you really need is a smartphone and some lighting. In fact, lighting is one of the most important things about creating videos. If you can face a window while recording, that's ideal, because natural light works really well. Also, an ordinary table lamp on a raised surface, like this one. You can also buy a photographic ring light, which is just a circular shaped light mounted on a tripod. Ring lights are useful because they're fully adjustable and they have a range of different light setting options. In the beginning, I tried using a reading light and that was a disaster. The light was too harsh, and although it looked good while I was recording, afterwards when I replayed the video, it looked very fuzzy and washed out, so I had to start over again. So in short, go for lots of light, You can use lots of different sources at the same time, but keep it very soft and diffused. It also may be worth investing in a wireless remote shutter, like this one. The remote shutter allows you to start and stop your video without touching your phone screen. In other words, if during your making of a video you make a mistake and you want to start again, you simply click the button rather than having to touch the phone screen, and then just push it a second time to start a new video. My remote shutter came free with my ring light, so if you're going to buy a ring light, it's worth checking this before you buy. If you're going to move during your video, check all of the different angles before videoing to make sure that you are still in shot. If possible, the camera should be slightly higher than eye level. Also, keep in mind that different media require different orientations. For instance, YouTube is a landscape, where some other social media might work better as a portrait. If you've done your 5 W's, you'll know where you want your video to appear. Another general piece of advice is to look at the camera, not at the screen. This is easier said than done, and in fact, I'm using a teleprompter to help me to remember what I want to say to you. So it's almost impossible to look right at the camera and still use your teleprompter at the same time. But if you can, the advice is to look at the camera rather than at the screen. And finally, the pitfall that I fell into quite often was getting very frustrated and not being successful and having to start over and over again. And that really started to show on my face. So stay calm and relaxed and look happy. Don't worry if you have to do lots and lots of takes. You'll get there in the end. And of course, your viewer will only see your final take, which will have you looking calm, cool, and collected. So last but certainly not least, let's look at the content of your video. I want to start with something that has really helped me with my videos, and that is to act as though the viewer is watching your video live, and therefore you can ask them to do activities even though you can't get any feedback. And you can even ask questions and then answer them yourself. So right now, I'm going to pretend that I'm starting a new video so that you can see an example of how this works. Hello and welcome to this Alexander Technique information video. If I were to ask you where you thought the top of your spine was, where would you point to? If you pointed here, at the height of the shoulders, I understand why, because it seems like the natural end of your body, but actually it's much higher. Your spine goes all the way up through your neck with 7 more vertebrae above the shoulders, and if you feel the little bump on the back of your head and move your finger down a bit, that's how high your spine is. Also, most of you will have pointed at the back, and although you can feel the bony part of your spine at the back, it's not helpful to think of your spine being behind you. The weight-bearing part of your spine comes up through the neck and finishes just below your ears. So by changing the way you think of it, you can allow your head to balance on top of your spine, with some of your head behind and some of your head in front of your spine. So I hope that illustrated how you can talk to the camera. You could start a video with a body fact and bring the viewer into the Alexander Technique that way. For instance, you could talk about sit bones, and then to give the viewer something to do, you could ask them to find their own sit bones. Then you could ask them if they think they sit on the highest point of those 2 bumps most of the time. And then after a slight pause, you could say that most people aren't sure, but when they really think about it, they're probably more likely to be on the backs of their sit bones. And that leads you nicely into the head-neck-back relationship and how the body always wants to gently align the head, shoulders, and hips where possible. And of course, you can demonstrate the difference between the backs of the sit bones and the tops of the sit bones yourself. Another way to structure your video is to talk about the use of smartphones, something most people are using in today's world. You could demonstrate how people normally sit looking at their phone and how this puts pressure on the neck and back muscles. Then you could bring in an image or a 3-dimensional prop, such as a skull, and show people how the top vertebrae of the spine works. You can use as little or as much anatomical detail as you're comfortable with, And if you don't want to show bones, you could just talk about how the head joint actually has a small amount of slide or pivot, just enough to pivot and allow you to look down in a more balanced way. You could add how the face looks down and the back of the head goes up when you're looking at your smartphone. You could also mention the weight of the head, and although it's useful to a point, most people can't picture 11 pounds. So I use a 5-liter bottle of water to demonstrate while I talk about the head. Another activity you could use is the nodding game. So you've already looked at the pivot, you've looked at how the face can go down and the back of the head goes up when you're looking. So now you get them to place their fingers here and to gently nod up and down. And as they continue to nod, you ask them to nod a little bit less and then less still. And when they finish this exercise, people usually feel that their neck is freer. You could demonstrate with a smartphone using yourself as a model and how that creates a more balanced way of looking down rather than throwing the whole neck forward. I hope that by using the atlanto-occipital joint and the head-neck-back relationship as a starting point, you can see the different options that you have available to you when you're creating your own video. And of course, you can use any body fact and apply the same ideas. Some other subjects, for instance, could be the centrality of the spine, or the importance of the hip joints, or how you could to use the arms well. Or your video could be activity-based, for instance. You could look at sitting, using a laptop, standing with good balance, or walking. So we've looked at where to start, we've looked at some of the practical aspects of creating videos, and we've looked at some examples of good content that you can use in your own Alexander Technique videos. And I hope that you found some inspiration to try making your own videos. And I will leave you with a short video that I've created just for this project, and I hope that you've enjoyed this beginner's guide to creating impactful Alexander Technique videos. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Jane Gregory. I'm a teacher of the Alexander Technique, and in this short video, we are going to be exploring how we can sit better. Before we can go any further, we need to know a few basic facts about the body. The first fact is that if the ear, shoulder, and hip are more or less aligned, you will naturally already be having better posture. That's easier said than done, so we need a few other body facts to help us. The next one is that there are 2 bony outcrops at the bottom of your body on the chair, which if you can be at the tops of those, and we're going to find them now by placing your hands from the sides underneath your backside, and you will feel 2 rounded bumps. Those are your sitting bones, and if you can stay on the tops of those, you will automatically have better posture. Let me demonstrate. If I'm on the backs of them, you can see I'm no longer lining up those 3 joints. So staying at the tops of those sitting bones will help you to stay aligned. But how can you stay like this and feel comfortable? Well, because we no longer squat like we did when we were children, the hip flexors, all of the muscles at the top of the legs around the body, can become very, very short. So to counter that, we're going to do a very simple stretch. So keeping the ear, shoulder, and hip aligned, we're going to range forward and rest our arms or hands on the legs. And make sure that you're allowing all of the weight to drop through your arms into the legs rather than holding it here in your lower back. And we're going to stay like this for a few moments, and this is where it really becomes an Alexander Technique exercise, because we're not really interested in a really large stretch. We're more interested in the relation between thinking about the stretch and allowing it to happen. And that way we're making a nice connection between our mind and our body. So after a few seconds, 10 or 20 seconds, you can come back, and I think you'll find that that's much more comfortable. Just a little bit more information now to help you. You can sit at the edge of the chair, and that will allow you to have better posture. Your legs will be freer. But if you're not accustomed to sitting at the front of the chair, it will become quite tiring. And in that case, you can move from the front of the chair occasionally, then back to the back of the chair. But the worst place to sit is the middle of a chair. And I'm going to demonstrate by just sitting there because then you'll want to go to the back of the chair and you'll end up having, wrong support. It's much, much harder to stay on the tops of your sit bones because your legs are sort of trapped on the chair as well. So the other place to sit is right at the very back of the chair, and that means bending in half and going all the way back. Hey presto, instantly better posture. So I hope you found that useful, and I thank you for watching. Bye-bye.